able to follow along. This is how it reads. Therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. As I mentioned, this sister and I spoke, maybe seated, a few weeks ago. She was well, she was vibrant, she was excited about ministry. We talked about things yet to come in respective areas that she served in, but yet, last week, that same life was no longer here. And when I thought about the theme of this week's revival, and I thought about this whole idea, reality as it were, of division within the church, all of the different things that divide us right in the body. This is the theme of today's message in light of it. We don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. There's just simply not time for this kind of carrying on. When I think about all of the different things that divide us, ethnicity in the church, a black church and white church and Hispanic and Asian churches, when I think about how we divide as it relates to emotion or the lack thereof in corporate worship, things like that divide us. When I think about how oftentimes we're divided by the days of worship. Some regard Saturday as the day of worship, others Sunday. We divide in areas like the role of women in ministry. We divide in areas like traditional versus contemporary gospel music. We divide even on areas like communion. Should we have communion on the first Sunday? This church believes it should be every other Sunday. We divide in these various areas to speak in tongues or not to speak in tongues. Women wearing pants in the church and men with earrings. We divide in all of these areas. Baptizing in the name of Jesus or in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We divide on preaching styles. Should he be a teaching preacher or should he who? We divide on so many different things. Even in theology, we divide on whether or not grace is sufficient. We divide when it comes to eschatology, premillennialism versus postmillennialism, and pre-trib versus post-trib, and whether or not there's going to be a millennial period and reign. We divide on all of these issues, and my sentiment this evening, brothers and sisters, is that we don't have time for this. There's just no time. There's no time for this. Dividing in areas of politics, whether or not you're Democrat or Republican. Listen, Jesus doesn't ride on the backs of political donkeys and elephants. We just don't have, we simply don't have time for this. When I think about this sister whose life was so bright, and all of a sudden, she's gone. Let me note this though, that the issue in our division is not necessarily the differences and preferences and activities, as it were, as we see them and interpret them. The issue is that we allow these things to divide us. There are some things that we embrace because pastors have to teach their conviction. Romans 14. Whatever he believes the word of God is saying about a particular area, he has to teach it accordingly. It's the issue of division. Well, when we make the statement, Eric, that we don't have time for this, then what is implied is that there must be some time for something else. What we're implying is that there is some object by which our time is supposed to be consumed. I'm not telling you nothing to do today, just some basic things. I think the best place to begin is what Jesus thought. Where would Jesus want us to exhaust our energies? Where would he want us to listen? We be so busy fighting against one another. I don't know about you, Pastor Winfrey, but one of the number one questions asked me by the unchurched and the unsaved is, why are there so many different denominations? Why so many different? Well, here's what Jesus said. There are two things that we know that Jesus really spent some time on, that he placed some emphasis on. That's the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. I think we can all stand silently on the Great Commandment found in Mark chapter 12, at least one area, verses 30 and 31. You can read it later. But the question was posed, Jesus, which of all of the commandments, not just the 10, but all of the upwards of 600 laws and statutes, which one, Master, is the greatest? If I could add my stuff, he said, listen, that's simple. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, and all of your strength. And he said the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said this: there's no other commandment greater than these. I guess what I'm trying to say today is that if we ain't loving him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and our neighbor as ourselves, certainly we don't have time for this. We see that this is his commandment to us, to love the Lord with our whole being and our neighbors as ourselves. And the Great Commission, Matthew 28 verses 19 and 20. We're commissioned to make disciples of all nations. We are commissioned to make disciples of all nations. This is what the Great Commission says. And it says not only make disciples, but to outwardly display their commitment by way of water baptism. And not only that, it says that we ought to teach them the word. Our time, the scripture said, redeem the time. Make good use of your time, for the days are evil. Be about the things that the Lord himself thought important. Does that make sense? Be about the things that the Lord himself had commanded. Be about the things that the Lord himself has commissioned. There is statistic data that supports it, that states the largest or the fastest growing religion in the world, as well as the United States, is Islam. It's Islam. It's a religion that does not bite its tongue about the deity of our Savior. It's a religion that does not apologize for the fact that and the truth that Jesus rose from the grave. It's a religion that does not stutter as to whether or not Jesus is the actual Messiah, yet it is the fastest growing religion in the world. And you think we got time for this? In this particular passage, as I move along right here in the book of Ephesians, with just such rich nuggets for the church. Verses 15 and 16 in that 5th chapter, there are 3 closely connected statements made in those 2 verses. The first is pay close attention to your walk. The second